People ask me all the time, so what is somatics? And the answer I give often varies. If it's a doctor or a physio, I might say it's a neuromuscular release technique or a sensory motor education. If the person is an athlete, a dancer, a yogi, I might say it's a really incredible way of realigning and recalibrating your muscles before a practice and releasing your muscles after a practice. If the person is a busy mum of 3 or a corporate exec, I let them know that there is a way to release tight necks and shoulders and hips and knees themselves. And if it's the little old lady down the street, I really encourage her to use somatics so that she can be more at ease in her body, keep picking up her grandkids, going for walks, playing golf, and doing all the things she loves doing for as long as she wants to do them. And somatics is truly all of these things to all of these people. But at the heart of it, it's a way of teaching our muscles to relax and keeping them relaxed. So in somatics, we don't try and fix you. We teach you how to fix yourself. And it's different to many other therapies because we use the brain to get conscious control of the muscles again. So in my experience, the effects are faster and they're longer lasting. The word soma and the word somatics was coined by Thomas Hanna from the Greek, meaning the living body in all its wholeness. I like to think of my soma as an aware, awake, alive, living, breathing, thinking, conscious body. So when we experience something somatically, we experience it on the inside. So to that degree, practices like Tai Chi and yoga and anything where we're fostering internal awareness are by definition somatic practices. The practices that I'm sharing with you here are distilled down from 2 decades of Thomas Hanna's clinical practice and are the most easy, calibrated movements that I know for releasing tension from your head all the way down to your toes. So one of the things that we know in somatics is that when muscles contract, they don't do so in isolation. And Tom Hanna studied over 20 years many of the reflexes, these whole body movement patterns that we have. And he codified them down into 3 primary reflexes, which he called red and green and trauma. So reflexes are essentially our response to stress, our response to challenges, and in general to life itself. So let's try them on for size. You've probably been doing them your whole life long without knowing. So bring yourself to stand. And the first reflex is called red for stop. And in the red light reflex, the muscles in the front of the body, called the flexors, and in the inner body tighten. So from the toes to the head, this is what red light looks like. You can do it with me. The feet get slightly pigeon-toed. The knees are slightly bent. Your adductors, your inner leg muscles, will be tight. The tail tucks under, what I call the tribe of tail tuckers. The shoulders round and the abdominals contract. Yeah. Along with the shoulders rounding, the arms might turn in a little bit and the head is often forward. Yeah. So if you can, hang out here a little bit in red light. See what that does to your sense of self. See what it does to your breath. And then have a little walk. I do this with large groups of people sometimes. It's lots of fun. Have a little walk around. And maybe it helps you to develop more empathy for old people who shuffle. Yeah, when you're in red light, very difficult to swing the legs. And then, coming out of that, take a breath or 2. Never nice to get stuck in the reflexes. So that's red, also called the startle reflex, and it is a response to fear. Think about the last time you got a fright. You tried to protect the front of the body. Again, reflexes are primal, they're instinctive. In many ways, we don't have control over them unless we consciously get in the way between the brain and the muscles. Yeah. The next reflex, and we'll be looking at exercises for all of these, is called the green right reflex for go. And this is the opposite. This time, the muscles in the back of the body tighten. So from feet to head, the feet now turn out. Possibility of hyperextension in the knees. Hamstrings contract, glutes contract, and really importantly, the extensors of the back contract. So if you've got lower back issues and your back is tight, it might be in green. Shoulders roll back now, the hands roll out. And if your mother ever told you, stand up straight and roll your shoulders back, this is probably what you did. Quite a military type stance. And I call it the bouncer in the nightclub. There's a little bit of bring it on. So hang out there a little bit in that posture. Notice how it makes you feel. Yeah, there's a pushing of the ground away. It's quite strident. And then relax out of that. Do anything you need to do. So the green light muscles, the muscles in the back, originate in a very, very early reflex about 6 months old when we extend our back to be able to meet the world in a new way. And I call them the alarm clocks, responsibilities, and deadlines muscles. So anytime we even think about going somewhere, these extensors in the back contract in order to move us forward. Yeah? The third reflex, which Tom called the trauma reflex, is slightly different. It is a little bit more in response to one-sidedness. So accidents, surgeries, maybe a car crash, a whiplash, carrying babies on one hip or bags on one shoulder, even playing asymmetrical sports. All of these things can pattern a one-sidedness into our structures. Yeah? So in trauma, you can try it on for size with me. The hip will hike, often. So one hip will be a little bit higher than the other. And the body might side bend towards that and rotate away. So we end up with an unevenness in the hips. We end up with uneven shoulders. So if you look in the mirror and your shoulders are not level or your hands are at a different position, probably trauma. And you might also feel that it creates an imbalance in how you bear your weight on your legs. So a lot of this idea of having one leg longer than the other is actually nothing structural. It's simply that the muscles above have contracted. Yeah. And then release out of that. I spent many years as a very diligent student studying and leaning over my desk in my final examination years. And when I finished that year, I was crooked. I had learnt so much that my body had patterned that response. And that's really what all of this boils down to. If we practice side bending, being at our computers and hunching forwards, or extending ourselves to meet life's challenges, then we get good at it. So what you practice, you get good at. It's really, really simple. And none of it is really a problem if we know ways to get out of it. So the truth of the matter is that we are all a combination of all of these reflexes. Yeah, it's very rare we see somebody in purely red or purely green, although it does happen. It's much more common that we might have a little bit of trauma, a little bit of side bending, carry our baby on one hip for several years with maybe some tail tucking. Or we've been taught to roll our shoulders back, but we've also been told to tuck our tail. And none of these things are a problem in themselves, not a single one of them. Where they become a problem is where we practice them so much that they become patterned into our neuromuscular responses, and it's the only groove that our brain and our muscles know. To make things even more interesting, we all also suffer from something called sensory motor amnesia, which is a term also coined by Thomas Hanna. And with SMA, it's very, very common that our muscles are on autopilot. Yeah? So they've contracted to do their job, but instead of releasing at the end of doing their job, they stay contracted, 20% or 30% or 40%. So I often have clients that come and they say, you know, I had a really good night's sleep and I woke up and my back was still sore. That's a case of sensory motor amnesia. It's probably likely that any part of you that hasn't responded to long-term physio, or chiro, or osteo, or massage, or drugging, or stretching, or any of these therapies, if you've been engaged in all of this and it hasn't worked, then your body probably has sensory motor amnesia in that place. And really, logically, the only thing to do about that is to re-engage, to connect your brain back up with your muscles again so that you get conscious control over them so they can contract and they can relax. So what we do in the practice of somatics is we shine a light into every single part of your body and we help you make the unconscious conscious, or we help you remember what your body has simply forgotten with this sensory motor amnesia. So really it's a case of we don't know what we don't know. And to do this, we have some really specific practices. And one of the most important of this is a practice called pandiculation, so a large word for a pretty easy concept. And you've been pandiculating your whole life long without even knowing it. So let's do one now. You reach your arms, lengthen, tighten your back muscles. That might become a yawn. And then let it go and fully relax. So that's what we call a full body yawn. And if you watch your dog or your cat or any animal, they pandiculate like that about 40 times a day. Anytime they get up from resting to moving, they stretch, even though now you know it's not really a stretch. Why? Because it wakes up their sensory motor cortex. It hooks up their muscles and their brain again. And that's the reason that your cat can go from sleeping to catching a mouse in 0.2 seconds, because their sensory motor system is so turned on. Yeah? It's really, really incredible. Let's try a different kind of pandiculation that might make more sense to you. Lift your shoulders up towards your ears, shrug them up, and then just relax them down. And do that a few times. You might have been taught to do this at your computer. Lift them, and then just drop them. Okay. Next time, lift them and slowly release them. Notice the difference in that instruction. Does it make a difference to the quality of the movement? Lift them. Slowly, slowly release them. Now let's add another layer to that. Shrug the shoulders up tighter than where they started. Focus on the muscles that you're contracting. And now focus on slowly, slowly lengthening them. And then completely turn them off. I do this in my office all the time. Let's try that again. Shrug the shoulders past the point of original contraction, tightening them even more without going into pain, and then slowly, consciously smoothing out the movement. Let the shoulders melt all the way down and then completely turn them off. So a pandiculation is a conscious shortening contraction, which is stronger than the current muscle tonus, followed by an eccentric or a lengthening contraction, followed by a complete relaxation. And we'll be applying this technique in a very, very easy way in all of the somatic exercises that I'm going to share with you. So remember, we don't stretch. It's a big one for yogis. We pandiculate, from the Latin pandiculare. And then we do a couple of other things, some of which might be slightly different for you. So we move slowly, we move very consciously, and we move with awareness. So awareness is really at the heart of all somatic practices. Yeah, it's like at the oracle at Delphi, know thyself. And slowing down the movement helps us do that. We train ourselves in a very clear moment-to-moment way to track, sense, feel, and register exactly what is going on in our muscles. Because really, it's only when we know ourselves from the inside out can we know what to do about it. And we apply those skillful means. We pretty much never go into pain. Yeah? Pain and contraction go together. Yeah? We don't feel pain and then relax. We feel pain and we tend to contract. So in our understanding, pain is the body's way of saying, can you please find a more skillful way of doing this? Can you please find an easier way of doing this? So we might approach an area and then back off. So we want to really, as I say to my clients all the time, regain our body's trust, particularly if we've been forcing it or pushing it, this kind of no pain, no gain sort of mentality. Here we're talking about no pain equals all the gain. So we're moving slowly, consciously, with awareness. We're not going into pain. We're developing this moment by moment sensing and tracking, almost as if we could shine this light inside our body and really, really see what's going on. We cultivate a good deal of patience, a good deal of persistence, and what I love meditation teacher Stephen Levine calls a pretty cosmic sense of humor. Yeah? Know that any practice that you do, if it's sincere, the results of your effort will be rewarded. Yeah? So the effects of this practice are very cumulative. So you're looking for a 5%, 10% to 15% improvement. And over time, that ends up in an ease that most of my clients and students didn't dream possible. So as you go through some of the practices that we do together, they are slow, they are more mindful. You may find your mind getting a little frustrated at the slowness, but know that there is a reason for it. We're very, very consciously using these techniques so that we can hook up the brain with the body again in a really clear way. Lastly, enjoy it. Enjoy the flexibility, the ease, the range of motion maybe that you haven't had for a long, long time. Use it to help you squat, to help you sit, to help you do your yoga, whatever it is you love doing. Yeah? Ready to dive in? I'll see you on the mat soon. Bye.